Let's demonstrate on an iPad some of the flexible features of the circular stamping engine in the Memes So Easy app. So about 7 entries down in our table, we'll select Stamp Photos, Text, and Patterns, Unique. And then the top entry of the table, choose Photo to Stamp Circle Spiral. And then we'll go to our camera roll and we'll pick a color wheel. And now we have 100 images stamped, and we can vary that using the slider. We can vary the count of stamped images shown from 1 to 100. Note how the number of images are spaced out evenly around the circle as you move the slider. That's a nice feature of this engine. The master radius of the circle is controlled by the engine. We can pinch and spread to change the radius, and we can drag the circle around too, and that can all be done under software control. Now let's press the light blue arc button on the right and then move the slider. The slider now allows the placement of images on the circle to be compressed to any desired fraction of the whole circle. You can even compress all of the images down to a single point. Software developers could easily animate any compression or expansion with a single line of code if this technology becomes part of the SDK. We would expect that compression and expansion of images on an arc would be a popular use case by software developers. Now let's roll the arc around on the circle, and we do this by pressing the roll the arc button, and then we move the slider. And so we can offset the arc anywhere from 0 to 360 degrees. And you see that's kind of fun. Okay, and we would expect that rolling images around on an arc would also be a popular use case by developers. There is a way to expand the placement of the images so that they wrap around the circle more than once. Before we do that, let's allow for a slight radius reduction of each successive image as it is drawn. By pressing the red radius reduction button, then moving the slider, we can see that the placement of the images get increasingly closer to the center. Now let's allow the placement of the images to wrap around the circle up to 24 times. So we press the arc button again. And now we move the slider. The arc button has a toggle state that allows you wrapping every other time that button is pressed. As you can see, the artistic merit is very high here when wrapping images around the circle many times, and that there is a spiral pattern now since we are using a small radius reduction. Let's press the arc button again and move the slider. The wrap feature has now been turned off, and the angle is limited to 0 to 360 degrees, as you can see as we move the slider. Let's press the arc button again to turn wrap back on. And moving the slider again, you see now we're spiraling much better. Okay, and turning it back on helps to see how the stamping engine can also control relative size differences between each successive image. Let's press the size reduction button now on the left and move the slider. The images get smaller the closer they are to the center, and again, the artistic merit is high in doing this. At this point, we would like to call attention to the orientation button on the right. Press it once, and all images point in the same direction. And if you haven't adjusted the angle offsets yet, that direction is straight up. Press the orientation button one more time. Now the orientation is back to tangential to the curve, so all images are pointing with the same face towards the center. Tangential orientation is more artistic in my opinion. Now this is a fun place to be in the engine. We can now adjust a variety of other controls to showcase the flexibility that is possible. You can change the master radius, by pinching and spreading. You can drag with one finger to move the center around. You can change the master size, and that will affect the size of all of the images. So let's press the Set Size button. Now let's move the slider. Let's press the Set Angle button and move the slider. Now all of the images rotate 0 to 360 degrees, and they rotate in sync with coordination. You can change the alpha of all the images. Let's press the Set Alpha button and move the slider. And you can see alpha is under control. Let's adjust the wrapping by pressing the Arc button. And now moving that slider, you can see we get very interesting patterns that develop. And let's pinch and bring in the radius, so you get these interesting overlaps. And all this would be under software control, so it's very flexible. And you can animate actually the wrap, so you can get some very unique animations. And all for just a few lines of code. And now, while we are wrapped here in these interesting patterns, let's also press Set Size and adjust the relative size of the particles or the stampings. And you see, you have a lot of flexibility here. And all this would be under software control. Let's show you one more thing that you can do when you have these stamped patterns like this. Let's press the Set Angle button. Now let's roll the slider around. And as you can see, the images all rotate, and it looks very good with this size reduction and radius reduction. And again, software developers could animate this with just a couple lines of code. You can also set up a constant twirl or spin applied to all images. On the right side, there's a twirl on-off button in green. Let's press that. Now all the images are twirling at a constant rate. And you can control that rate by moving the slider. Let's move it to the right, move it back towards the center, which will stop it, and then we'll move it to the left. So this would also all be under software control. There's one other thing we'd like to show you. Here's how you can toggle the twirl on and off. So let's press the twirl on off button. It stops. Press again, it starts. Now, let's also change the photo. In the upper right corner, there's a button. Let's press that. And we'll go to the camera roll, and we'll select a Rubik's Cube this time. That's an interesting design. Okay, if we press the change photo one more time, it's only going to replace half the images this time. It'll interleave them, showing you the flexibility of the engine. Since it's basketball tournament time, let's select a basketball. And as you can see, you have an interleaving of the images. So you're not limited to 2 different images. You could have any type of pattern of interleaving of images desired. And that's very flexible. We're just about done here, but let's play with a few of the controls here. So let's control the arc, and you can see how that works with the interleaving of images. And let's try controlling the size of the size reduction. And let's control the radius reduction too a little bit here. And let's control the master size. Then we're done.